Hi everyone, welcome. Today we're going to talk about heart walls. Um, in particular, we're going to ask the question, can heart walls be inherited? Right, and Miss Heather here, she asked a really good question, and I thought, yeah, why don't we all discuss this? I feel like I've been pondering this, and I feel like I have a good idea, but I want input from all of you as well, if you can. But first of all, let's cover the basics of heart walls, okay? So that we can all be on the same page, and then we'll dive into the deeper questions later. So guys, heart walls is just like energetic walls that we put up to protect our hearts, right? We have, experiences where we meet people that you feel like there's a wall, like you're trying to talk to them, you're trying to connect and then make friends perhaps, and there's just something there. They're just like, there's a pushback, right? And you're like, they're just not as open to connecting with you. And so suddenly you just feel like, I just need to, turn away and not, not work so hard because there's a wall. There's nothing that's going to go through right now. Um, Yeah. So in the scriptures, they talk about hardened hearts, and they talk about the heart that wax gross. So I don't think it's like icky heart. I think it's more like it's just so hard, like wax candle wax, that it can't be penetrated. And what I learned originally from Dr. Bradley Nelson is that we have heart walls, and then we also have hidden heart walls. Like it looks on the outside like they're friendly enough, but really there's things that are layers that are very thin that still blocking people. The reason why we have heart walls is it's a self-protection thing. So if something happened in your childhood, usually in the childhood or maybe early years, that trigger some sort of emotional pain, you suddenly maybe mostly subconsciously put up walls, so energetic walls. So your subconscious may be saying, oh, people are cruel, people are mean to me, I don't want people to hurt me anymore. And you suddenly put energetic boundaries and barriers up so that you don't ever open your heart up to those people or humans in general. So it's like a big general thing that like it blankets everything. Instead of being selective about certain people, we just like blanket. I don't love the world. I don't, feel safe in the world. Um, and we can actually find what it's made of energetically as well. So it could be like an energetic blanket or energetic brick wall or energetic metal wall or glass wall or whatever it is that you know we associate with in the physical world. Right? It's really interesting that way, and those things give us clues. Um, the bad thing about heart walls is that it stops us from feeling that love and stops us from making a full connection to the Lord. And we want to connect to Heavenly Father. I feel like sometimes the walls need to be up for a certain period of time because it's important to protect those people, to help them keep going when they're in a situation where it's very painful. For example, if it's an abusive relationship, um, you know, and they're young and they just need to survive, it's actually a good thing for that time. But as they get older, they really need to remove it so that they can feel God. And the scripture that, sorry, let me drink a little bit. The scripture that reminds me of the importance of removing the heart wall is about coming to Christ with a broken heart and a contrite spirit. I think we're afraid that our hearts will be broken and that we will be beyond repair. But actually, I feel that the heart is meant to break sometime in this life. And we somehow need to connect to the atonement of Jesus Christ to mend our heart. And that connection will keep us connected forever with him. And it's like him rebirthing us. Okay. So that's why I invite people to feel the feels, feel the pains, and experience the whole spectrum of emotions. And then, it will be instructive to change whatever it is we need to change. And it compels us to come to Christ and be one with Christ. All right. So I'll give you an example because maybe all of that might be like, whoa, that's, doesn't make sense. So this lady says, hey, can you do a session on my husband? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So he comes along and I, ask him questions about what happened because, you muscle test if this person has a heart wall open. First of all, you want to see if they're open-hearted because that is important to receiving, and they're not. And so if they're not, then I'm like, oh, do you have a heart wall? Yes. And, I tested, at this very young age, and I can't remember now how old, but I know it was under 10 because I remember thinking of a picture of a little child. So I think it was 7, 8, maybe even 9. But he created a heart wall at around that time. And I'll tell you why the wife says that he needed a session with me, because she's like, my husband always complains that he's hot and he just can never cool down enough. And he's very uncomfortable. So can you help him somehow? And I said, yeah, let's do this. So yeah, so we found a heart wall. So we asked at the original time this heart wall was created, and it was around 7, 8, 9. And then I asked him what was happening during that time. And just to go back to his childhood, because sometimes you say, what happened? And like, I don't know. So what was your childhood like? And then he says that, his his dad was very abusive. And I said, oh, tell me more about that. And he says, well, he would beat me. And he said, I refused to cry. And he said, when I was little, I decided that he can't hurt me anymore. Right. And he refused to cry. And in order to not cry, he decided that he won't feel pain anymore. So I said, yep, you have a heart wall there. And I think that's what you did to protect yourself from not feeling and then not crying. And I said, okay, can we clear it now? And it's no, we can't clear it. So I said, let's find more information about this because it's instructive somehow to him. And I said, okay, is it harder than wood? And yes, it was harder than wood. And, I was like, oh, what is harder than wood? And he looks at me and he's like, steel. When I muscle tested, oh yeah, steel. Yeah, that's harder than wood. And then I thought, okay, well, how thick is this wall? And he's in Australia, so we're in the metric system. And so I said, okay, is it, in centimeters? No, it's meters. I'm like, yeah, is it 1 meter? Yes, it was 1 meter. So he has a 1 meter thick wall. So it's like an arm's length, right? Around his heart. And then I looked at him and I thought, oh my gosh, I could see why you not felt that pain. Yeah. And then he went ding, he's like, oh, steel conducts heat. And he's like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, well, I guess this explains why you feel hot all the time, right? Um, yeah. So, anyways, he's not a little boy anymore. He's not being beaten by his dad anymore. And I thought, are you ready to release this? So we found all the emotions that are attached to this steel 1 meter heart wall, and we decided to resolve it. Deep breath in, release, let go of this, and then we kind of worked on Jesus, our Heavenly Father, angels, protect me. I'm strong enough. My heart is strong enough. It's okay for me to feel. It's okay for me to cry. And he felt better. And his wife reported that he was a lot happier. Okay. So, that's why we want to release these heart walls so that, we can connect to God, of course, and then we can connect to each other and feel the whole spectrum of feelings, because we're here to train up to be gods. And part of that is to experience all of the different feelings that humans may feel, right? Then we can relate to people, and we can succor other people because we get what they're feeling. That succoring is about connecting to others and pouring out love to them. It's important for us, our heart, to love, right? And that's what it's designed to do. So in the scriptures, when I read, the people that have hardened heart or heart that's waxed rose, all that is like an indicator of heart walls, okay, to me. And, we pray to the Lord, we ask for the power of the atonement of Christ to soften people's hearts. And something very interesting that I don't know if I've ever told you guys, but I learned, because I went to this meeting where they're trying to sell insurance to your elderly parents, in case they have to go to nursing homes and whatnot. And, that might be expensive if suddenly they have to go to a nursing home, right? So they wanted to sell insurance for that. But they quoted some really interesting studies. And basically, they're saying men and women, after they retire, they have a very high likelihood, especially men within the first 3 to 5 years, of having heart attacks. And, so the studies say it's like the average time that you're going to be paying for these nursing homes or whatever is 3 to 5 years. And women, maybe, up to 10 years, but, a lot of people have these heart attacks. And I went home pondering about that. And I think, why, right? Do people have heart attacks like that? And I know like heart issues is about squeezing the joy out of life, and not receiving love and not loving, right? So there's that lack of flow, energy flow in the heart, holding on to a lot of heartaches and things. And after doing a session with my husband, my friend, and she was telling about her husband, how he was such a different person at work, and then he's such a different person at home. And, his work is so tough. I'm reminded that guys are very good at compartmentalizing. So, they can switch on the work mode and be a totally different person, shut off all the emotions and go to work and do their job and, come and survive, right? And then come home and he can switch off. But when this guy switches off, he doesn't work anymore. He doesn't do any housework because that's considered work to him. When he's home, he gets to play. He doesn't want to think about work. And she's frustrated because she's like, oh, he never helps me with the housework, blah, blah, blah. And I kind of like consoled her and said, I think guys compartmentalize. And so now that he's home, he's not in this work mode, perhaps, and, we were thinking about that. And then I made that connection. I thought, what if these guys spent decades, years of their lives shutting off their emotions, right? And now that they're retired, they suddenly are allowed to play and feel joy and experience life. And that's something they're not familiar with because they've spent decades shutting all that off, right? And I felt like, oh, maybe because they're not used to it and they don't know what that looks like, they've lost their purpose. They've, this is just new territory for them, and it's hard. It's hard, and I can see why it could affect that heart of them, of theirs. Okay, yeah. So, anyways, those are my thoughts about heart walls. I feel like I'll give you one more example with a lady. So my friend, she had one heart wall at 4, and we discovered that it was made of 3 duvets or duvets or fluffy blankets, and we couldn't clear it until we understood why she created it in the first place. And around that time, she said that her parents would fight a lot and they would yell at each other. She'll go into her room, close the door, and get under as many blankets as she can. And she'll cover her ears. So this 4-year-old is trying to block out all of the yelling and the screaming and all that fighting energy. So that's how she protected herself. And, as an adult, she's like, oh, I have 3 blankets on my bed. And I have 3 blankets on my couch, and she realizes that's her protective mechanism. She tries to shut out the pains and the scariness of the world, right? And once you understand that, and then you talk to yourself and tell yourself, hey, I'm brave enough, I'm strong enough, the Lord is with me, I can, change this. I can release this and I can let go of my fears, trust in the Lord, and of course, we when we peel these heart walls off, we experience this change, a shift in us. And sometimes it hurts. Sometimes our heart hurts. Yeah, right. Because we're adjusting to a new self. My sister was overzealous and she was excited to help her husband clear heart walls. And this is another reason why we ask for permission. All right. She did not ask permission. And she cleared 3 heart walls from her husband. And when, she came home, well, when he came home, he was like, I'm really tired today, more than normal. And for the next couple of days, he's like, my heart really hurts and I'm just so tired and sleepy all the time. I just can't get myself to do anything. And they're connected with her. And she's like, oh, oops. And he's like, what are you oopsing about? And she's like, oh, I think I did that. I helped you clear 3 heart walls. And he's like, yeah, well, next time, can you let me know? So, just FYI, heads up. So, anyways, I think to myself, when I do sessions with people, I have to ask the question, oh, is this enough? Like just 1 heart wall today and then another heart wall on another day, because people will adjust, their energy adjusts. But the good thing is, like my brother-in-law, he's like this soft teddy. He's just so sweet and gentle and kind and loving person that, it's amazing how much change these people go through when you help them clear heart walls. So I'm going to pause there, talked a lot. Anyone with questions or comments so far?
I have a question. Like when we're talking about what heart walls are made out of, is it also like can they also be made out of trapped emotions
They're all
as well?
trapped emotions. They're all trapped. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so you could also like go down the route of like what emotions are
No, I
trapped.
always go down the path of where emotions. For example, if I feel like, oh, you have the emotion of anger, for example, that's the emotion, but we can't release it because this anger is objectified as a steel wall. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So we can't just say, oh, let's release a steel wall. It's actually it's the emotions that look that in that person's mind is, because our mind thinks and sees pictures. We don't see words.
Yeah.
So we have to kind of see something. And so
Mhm.
the steel wall was a representation of this guy's anger. Yeah. And that's why he saw red. He was very angry and hot all the time. So, his wife says, yeah, at the drop of a hat, he can be mad and really mad at everything all the time. It's just a switch on and a switch off. It's not like a little mad, in different degrees with everyone and everything. It's just mad. Yeah. So, yeah, that's how she sees his response. And he didn't see that. Um, and that was normal for him. Yeah. So when we release it, we find the emotions. And sometimes it's just something that your brain says, oh, yeah, I can find it. Or your heart energy says, yeah, 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 I know exactly what you're talking about. And you can release it right away. And other times you just have to dig in and realize what was the story behind this and finding the material, the energetic material that it's made out of, gives you a clue of the story that you've told yourself or that you've experienced, to give you an understanding so that you can resolve it. Yeah,
Mm.
sometimes people bury it so deep. I've had people that don't have any recollection of their childhood. Right? They're like, no, I have no memories of my childhood, before I was 12 or something like that. And as we release emotions or as we find heart walls, then they, remember certain things. And it's just amazing, right? Like, oh, I haven't spoken about that in like 40 years or whatever. And suddenly they remember these small details. Yeah. It's like our subconscious puts it behind a file, a cabinet, and then, a brick wall in front of that cabinet or whatever. You remember that you put a cabinet behind that wall, So it's just amazing. I've, just experienced these things with people, and that's why I teach it because I had no idea that those things can happen. Yeah, yeah, good question. Anybody else? So, um, here's the question. Do you think that heart walls can be inherited? What do you think, guys? I'm leaning to no with a but. Okay, because we inherit patterns. We inherit, like in the scriptures, it says, um, especially in the Book of Mormon, these people that are Lamanites, they have this generational anger and generational feeling of resentment towards the, Nephites, right? So I feel like there is a natural pattern that we can follow. Um, and so if parents uh, have a tendency to create these strong heart walls, right? And they, pass that kind of pattern onto their kids. When parents have heart walls, though, I feel like they have a less of an ability to love on their children, and these children don't feel that love as strongly. And then the kids will, I feel like it's a natural thing for them to set up heart walls. So yeah, I say that it's like an intentional, it's a you thing. You did this, you created that. But because we have a tendency in our family, it does that. Yeah. And then we can, even currently, we can start creating heart walls if we're not diligent and aware. So you can clear all the heart walls from the past, and you're good for a while, and something happens, and then your subconscious says, "Oh, well, whoa, never, ever, ever again will I this," and so suddenly there's a wall up. Yeah, and we can create walls against the Lord as well. Like I've tried my best, I've done everything, I've checked all the boxes, I've gone to church, I've been faithful, and yet these bad things happen to me. I don't want you to tell me what to do anymore, God. I'm going to create this walls where I don't hear you. Yeah, it can be that too. Yeah. So at the early ages, the formative years, we want to keep our children's heart open. And one way we do this is to just, be mindful of teaching them emotions, words for emotions, expressing their feelings, allowing them to feel, allowing them to cry, allowing them to talk about their emotions appropriately and behave appropriately. Um, you know, and using oils like rose and geranium over the heart, especially for boys. Because there's a culture, the toxic masculinity culture, where the boys don't feel like they're allowed to cry or express their emotions and feelings. Yeah. So keep that heart open. Mhm. When you work with people that have a hard time, like feeling their feelings, or they're like, I feel like I can cry, I should cry, and I feel kind of sad, but it's not coming out. you know. In that case, I use two oils. It's helichrysum and cypress. Helichrysum is the oil that holds your hands and tells you you can go through this pain, and we'll cross over to the other side of this river of pain and sorrow, and we'll be okay. But we can't go around it or over it. We have to go through it. So that's what helichrysum does. It allows you to feel the pain, cry, and then know that there's a happy thing on the other side. So with cypress, it's about flow. We could keep on putting these blocks up that stops that flow, like, dams, right? Just kind of like pull it all down and then open it up. I taught classes, just regular, oil classes, where I say this oil does this physically, that oil does that physically. And sometimes when I take out that helichrysum oil and I pass it around and I say, okay, if you have bruises and little cuts and things, helichrysum is very good for that. There's times that, like, more than not, there's someone that needed it and would just cry. They couldn't help it but cry. I had a lady, she held on to the table just trembling because she was trying to stop herself from crying. She walked in, she looks like $1 million. She's just so fancy, so confident looking. And then I take out this oil in the middle of this class and she loses it. And after class, we have a little quiet conversation, and she tells me, she's like, oh my gosh, I've been going through so much lately. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. And here's the first time that she's like, just feels like she has to release it and share and tell someone. Yeah. And I would say to people like that, just put a couple of drops over your heart, and see how you go. Well, what that really means is allow yourself to feel it and find the emotions to express what those feelings are. And once you express it, the act of expression is a way of resolving. Because when you can't put your finger on something and it's just like this, blah, it remains there because it's stuck. It doesn't have like this exit because you haven't let it go. Yeah. So once you say, oh, I know what this is, and then you find that actual ribbon, you pull it out and it's gone. Yeah. So those feelings that are buried or just kept inside, it never dies, it never goes away. It gets passed on to our children. Yeah. So at times I think, oh, my ancestors, but I am reminded that they didn't know how to resolve it. Maybe they weren't encouraged, not maybe, most of the time, they're not encouraged to feel their feelings and cry and take a moment to whinge, to complain or to vent, right? Maybe their parents were just tough, and then they had kids that are tough, and they try to toughen them up anyways, and just, yeah, we're not, being these softies or anything. um we are strong and we are tough, but we're allowed to feel our feelings as well. Yeah. Even God weeps, right? So anybody want to comment or ask questions? So what if you find,
Dave,
yeah, go ahead.
I just keep having, whew, now I get to see myself. I just keep having this thought about my son who turns 14 this year. And I know you keep telling us like you can work with your kids, like they're in your home and they're there and they're your stewardship and just teach. And so when you said to teach way to support your kids, be mindful of teaching them the words and the vocabulary and the emotions and allow them to feel their feelings and just be present with them while they're feeling. I feel like we do all that.
Mhm.
And we have room to grow. Um, and my oldest just bears the brunt of like the problems his parents were working out while he was so little, like he bears the weight of our really painful lessons, right? That like before we really did some of the work
Mhm.
and got serious. And he's an emotional, sensitive, slightly autistic kid. So like when I work with him on like I have shown him the lists of the emotions and he even asks for one of them to stay up on the fridge,
Mhm.
so he can like see it at eye level. And sometimes I'm better at like being present with them than others. But I feel like there's a disconnect. Like his brain um has a toxic load and like there's weakness there, right? From some of just the like development of some of the load that has led to his quirkiness, right? But his heart is really where he leads from. All of us are meant to lead from our heart, but that is actually where he came into the world with a very strong, sensitive, tender, like I joke that he's my bard. Like he's a poet and a musician and a writer and a thespian, and he's all these like heart-centered passions. And so teaching him the vocabulary is one thing, but I feel like there's a disconnect between like learning it cognitively and feeling it because he carries that load and those heart walls are probably all still like there. I don't
Mhm.
know. I'm just thinking out loud here of just like
Yeah, yeah.
how to support my children. And he's the one that keeps coming to mind when you're talking of like, and my time with him is the shortest, right? He's my oldest.
Mhm. Yeah.
I don't have a specific question, just grateful and just like
Yeah,
more
got it.
rhetorically, how do I bridge the gap between his
Yeah.
head and his heart, or how do I support that?
Yeah, I think you've got it there, just as you were explaining this to yourself. So if you use oils like patchouli and what was that? Copaiba, right, along his spine, it helps anybody with the brain and the heart connection, or brain and body connection. Because his spirit is like, experiencing all of these things, but his head, it hasn't been used to like identifying those different feelings and expressing it articulately. So the oil for the articulation is lavender and spearmint, the oils for those, for being able to feel it and then expressing it. So spearmint, you can drink it, you can put it on the bottom of your feet because it sorts out your tummy. And lavender calms you down so that you're not racing too far, and helps you kind of pinpoint what it is that you need to express. Yeah, without just being confused with all the clutter. Yeah. And I think this is a practice thing. You just can help him say the words and feel the feel and say, that's this feeling. And then just have one feeling at a time instead of, and then here's another feeling and there's another feeling all in one day. Yeah. I did a session with my youngest, and it took 3 days, 3 sessions. And for her, she's a feeling kind of person. But I felt like what we did wrong was we just had too many emotions in one go. Yeah. And so as she expressed, and I felt like we just talk about this? Didn't we just talk about this again? As she felt it more fully, I kind of let her, I'm like, oh, maybe we didn't like let it all out, because she's saying the same things again. So this time I let her lead. And I said, okay, feel it, muscle test it. Can you explain that to me? At first I'm like, oh, it's just this. Yeah, can you see why you feel that way? Oh, yeah, let's release it. I'm thinking, yeah, that's good, done. But for her, she had to kind of feel it all the way. And then I felt like she needed to attach, here's the actual feeling word to go with that energy. Yeah. So it's kind of like not really just cleaning out the garden as thoroughly as you thought you would. You picked a little bit of weeds and then you're like, I think I'm done. But then there's a whole other thing too. But just taking your time slowly, and then you can find it all. Yeah. But yeah, I can see that there's a lot of people that, like Amanda said, their mind and their heart is not as connected. Yeah. I think it's just about unlearned skill of experiencing those emotions, and then, identifying it with a name. At the beginning of the last session we had, she was like very discouraged and said to me, I don't think I'll ever get better. She's 17. If this will never, ever, ever go away, and I'm going to be sad forever and ever, because she kept on having these same things come up. But at the end of that session, she's like, I feel lighter. I feel happier. I think it's all done. I thought, oh well, okay. So sometimes I'm like, I think not patient enough to let it all out. And I assume that when we find it and we find where it's from, then we can let it go and be all good again. But yeah, she hasn't had that experience where she can identify exactly the emotion that is attached to those feelings. Yeah. So thank you, Amanda, for that. That's what I wanted to ask, and then you suggested that too. Like how would you work on your children, like if they're like 18 and if they're under 18, how would you work with them if you find that they have a heart wall? I would help them find it, even if they're not there. You can just go, oh, so and so has a heart wall at this age, and then find an opportunity to chat with them about it, and help them learn words, and just be patient, because it might be ugly before it's pretty. Ugly as in, there's a little bit of a struggle. Ugly as in, they don't want to hear about that pain. But, just identifying and saying the word. So do you feel lost at that time? Or do you feel rejected when this happens? And just leave it there, just so that they can, ponder it a little bit in their souls, and maybe there's another time that they'll be ready to talk about it. Yeah. But I think it's a great start, and then you can nudge it along. I think our oldest children, uh, we have an immense amount of guilt associated with our oldest children, because we didn't know what we were doing, right? So my oldest daughter, sometimes we work on the same things, but lately I felt like there was a shift, that we haven't repeated those things again. And I've apologized to her many times. Sorry, I didn't know better. And she's like, Mum, stop. She said, look, I volunteered. I volunteered to be the first one. I volunteered to experience all this. So it's my stuff to deal with. And I thought, oh, okay. She's like taking on that responsibility. But now, I see that she has the skills to resolve her own things. I've guided her over the years. And of course, we still need each other once in a while to kind of think aloud, and be that sounding board. But I see that she's taking more and more responsibility for all of the feelings that she's had, because she knows that that's the way she misinterpreted the world. I felt like there's just so much shift in her. So yeah, now that she's in college and she's on her own, I just felt like, I guess all the parenting, turned out after all anyways, despite me and my weaknesses. So yeah, I think that parents who can have a bit of hope there. We've got the Lord on our side. We prayed, we tried, and do your very best. And I think the Lord will jump in and help. What I call it, the consecrating your effort, right? And you had good intent and you did what you can. So the Lord will just keep helping them. Yeah, even without you there. And that's why prayer is so powerful, right? Yeah. Anybody else?
Thank you, Jade.
Oh,
Thank you so
I
much.
hope that helps, Amanda.
So much. Thank you. I appreciate you so much.
And what is he, 14, 15, right?
He's 13. He'll be 14
Oh,
this year.
yeah, that's great. Yeah, so we've got time to support him there. Yeah. I would just make a roller bottle and up and down his spine, on the side of his little feet where the spine is. Yeah.
Thank you. I love it.
Mhm.
I will do it. I commit. I'll do it. Thank you.
I look forward to hearing about him in the next little while. Yeah. Anybody else? Anything else that you want to talk about? Heather, did you find that well?
Yeah, that was all really helpful. I just have a few comments that I don't know if I have questions about, but
Yeah.
I was just thinking, when you're talking about working on your kids, ever since my husband learned about heart walls, he keeps saying to me, he's like, I think I have one. I think I have one of those, because he's like, because I don't feel like, I feel like my feelings are like so, contained. Like I don't feel very sad, but I don't feel very happy.
Yes.
And he's like, I think I have one of those. So I'm like, okay, well, I like, and so he wants me to help him with it, but I feel so nervous. Even working on my kids, I feel like I have stewardship, but it would be my first time working on someone else, right? So I feel like, well, like I guess I would be learning too, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I guess that's just my feeling is like, okay, I want to help, but I'm nervous.
Well,
I'm nervous to find these because yeah, like I feel like I'm still working on my own,
yeah,
heart walls.
yeah. Well, you will learn so much. You know it already. Um, the beauty of what we do is we don't have to be all the way healed and all the way perfect to help others. We actually complete our healing with others. So we get to the point where we're like, I think I kind of know what I'm doing, maybe. And not that you're super confident, but you got an idea. Um, and that's when you need to lean on the Lord heavily so that He can open your mouth, help put words in there and guide your work. And that's how I came up with all of this. Because I tried other people's modalities, and then when I went to do this, the Lord was training me and training me and training me, and it became a pattern. And then I realized, oh, okay. But I kept it to myself because I'm like, oh, it's just for me. And then I realized, when he prompted me, he's like, no, I provided this space. Because when we went to the States, I felt like it was my cocoon state where I had a space where I'm not distracted by all these family activities. I have so many family members and so many things happening all the time. And so I had that time to collect all my thoughts and collect all the lessons and then put them in this system where we can follow. Yeah. So it came from all those experiences with people, but a lot of it was from desperation because people were like, I feel this way, and I feel discouraged, and I don't want to go on anymore, or whatever, or a situation, and I'm like, oh, I want to help, can I help, can you help me help, and then it comes. So even like with my husband getting a job, um, he did all he can, and he kept on getting rejections. And we can make excuses. Well, it's the end of the financial year. People are not hiring, blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, oh, there must be something else because he's really distraught about this. And then I'm like, okay, there's something. Honey, can I sit with you? Can we chat about this? Can we talk about this? Can maybe I can practice doing a session on you? Yeah. And then, all of these things open up and I'm like, whoa, I didn't realize that that could happen. I didn't realize that I could say things like this and ask these questions, but it was all from the Lord. My friend, she worked on releasing her husband. I think she was like not necessarily courted, but she was like very attached to her husband. Um, and we needed to do the Abraham and Isaac challenge to kind of rearrange the priorities of her heart because, all her kids and her husband, everything was her idol. And idol means like something that you worry about and care about more than, the Lord. You just had to rearrange the priorities there. So in her mind, this was the funniest thing because in my mind, I would say, just put everything on the altar and let it go. In her mind, she started at the bottom of a mountain and she carried her husband in her mind up the mountain. I'm thinking to myself, why would you do that to yourself? What do you imagine being up there on the top of the mountain already in front of the altar? But I don't know why. She had to go through that process. And I'm like, oh yeah, some people need that just to give them some time to let go. And so she and him walked up the mountain and then she placed her husband on the altar and she cried and she's like, Lord, take him, I entrust him to you and all that. Okay, so she comes home that night and he is feverish and in bed, miserable, in so much pain. And she's like, when did this start? I just talked to you earlier today. He's like, oh, around 10:30. And that was when we were talking about that. Yeah. And he's like, I feel like I've hiked a mountain and my body's aching all over. So the next day she came to our retreat and she's like, let me tell you what happened last night. Yeah, so she kind of oiled him up, helped him feel better and explained to him that maybe that was my fault. Yeah. Instead of just like unattached to the husband, she had to carry him up the mountain. So, or he was walking with her or something, I don't know. But yeah, it's so interesting that when we work with people, their energy shifts as well. So, Heather, it's a great idea that your husband suggested that he has this work that needs to be done, and then you can sit and talk about it, and then he can, feel that change and that shift in him. We have this emotional catharsis. So even if you work with your children, we want to do it one at a time, because the adjustment might be really uncomfortable. I remember working on myself and releasing a few things. And I was telling my husband about what I released, and she's like, "Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I'm happy for you, honey." And then I'm like, "I'm good. I'm really good." So that was fine. But the next day, I woke up and I was an emotional wreck. I just felt like crying. And I'm telling him, I don't know what's happening. I'm so confused today. And then I sat down like a little kid on the floor and rocked and cried and rocked and cried. And he looked at me like, okay. I'm like, what? So he's like, tapping my head and then rubbing my back. Are you okay? You okay? And I'm like, I feel this way, and nothing, no, never, nothing, and then I have this big cry, and then it's over. And then I looked up at him and I thought, well, never mind what I just said just now. Just ignore all that. I'm good now. I'm normal now. I thought that was so weird, right? To have this emotional catharsis. Yeah. So just be aware there's nothing wrong with you. You're not going crazy. All right. Hi, Kylie. Welcome. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to, if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to stop the recording so we can talk off the record. Yep. So thank you, everyone. And thank you for watching.